Three big scandals rocking the White House this morning. The latest, accusations that the Justice Department was secretly snooping around in the phone records of Associated Press reporters, including their home phones. Big issue on the front burner this morning. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Greg Jarrett in for Bill Hemmer. The secret subpoena of telephone records being called a massive and unprecedented intrusion. All of it coming on the heels of revelations that the IRS has been targeting a wide range of conservative groups, and as the Obama administration faces increased pressure over Benghazi. Peter Doocy begins our coverage this hour from the White House. Peter, did the Department of Justice give the Associated Press any kinds of heads up that they would be collecting so many phone records over 2 months?
No, Greg. The AP says that they had no idea the Justice Department pulled these telephone toll records for more than 20 different lines until Friday, when they got a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office that said that 2 full months of 2012 records were secretly obtained for journalists' home phones and cell phones, as well as for lines at AP bureaus in D.C., New York, Hartford, Connecticut, and at the House of Representatives. Now the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington is saying that when it comes to pulling phone records, quote, we must notify the media organization in advance unless doing so would pose a substantial threat to the integrity of the investigation. But the AP says they still haven't received a reason for sure why the DOJ needed so many records.
This is not a very narrow cast inquiry. It seems to be very broad, and we don't really know what it's about since they haven't told us.
Up the street on Capitol Hill, a spokesman for Speaker of the House, John Boehner, says the First Amendment is first for a reason. If the Obama administration is going after reporters' phone records, they better have a damned good explanation. But the White House press secretary, Jay Carney, says the first time anyone here learned about the DOJ seeking AP reporter phone records was on the news. Greg?
Well, it was quite a verbal mugging last Friday when Jay Carney appeared in the press briefing room. It's going to be quite a briefing today.
About 2.5 hours from right now, Greg, there's a 12:30 briefing scheduled. And this, of course, comes on the heels of Jay Carney's boss, President Obama, coming forward yesterday to talk about the other 2 major stories confronting the White House right now. President Obama condemned IRS personnel for unfairly targeting conservative groups, and he called the controversy over Benghazi talking points a sideshow. So we're going to hear more about those stories from Jay Carney in about 2 hours. Then looking ahead to tomorrow, Attorney General Eric Holder is going to actually appear on the Hill before the House Judiciary Committee, where their chairman, Bob Goodlatte, the Republican from Virginia, has already said Holder will face pointed questions about a possible abridgment of the First Amendment. Greg?
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. Peter Doocy, live in front of the White House. Peter, thanks very much. Martha?
Well, if this does indeed turn out to constitute an abuse of power within the Obama administration, some believe that it suggests a Nixonian behavior on the part of the White House. Some of these government watchdogs are speaking out about this, referring to President Nixon's calls for the IRS to audit his political enemies. Steve Hayes joins me now, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Steve, what do you make of that comparison?
Well, good morning, Martha. I think, look, one of the most important things that critics of the Obama administration can do is not let their conclusions race ahead of the evidence as we know it. So I would separate these 3 things. I mean, with respect to Benghazi, it's very clear that the Obama administration has misled the American people, that this has happened at the highest levels, that this has happened both with respect to the talking points and in the discussion of what came after the talking points. We've had this from Jay Carney last Friday. We had it from the President of the United States yesterday. I think that there's no question that that's been taking place on Benghazi. With the AP story and with the IRS story, there is a lot we need to know before we can make any conclusions. But I will say what we do know right now is deeply troubling.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the AP story, the suggestion is that the Justice Department was after some information, and they're claiming that the reason that they didn't let AP know was because it would hinder their investigation. And that, as we heard the AP spokesperson speak to, would sort of indicate that you're going after something specific, but she's saying, look, it was so broad across so many phone lines that smacks of something that's questionable. Then, on top of that, the White House says, we first learned about this in the news. So, is it specific investigation, A? And B, does it make any sense to you that the White House wouldn't be aware of it?
Well, remember, the president said that he first learned about it in the news. There was actually reporting that the White House counsel's office had known about it, I believe, on April 22nd. So there's some discrepancy there. That's not necessarily anything nefarious, but it certainly needs to be explored a little bit further. If you look at the broad nature of these requests, 20 phone numbers over the course of 2 months, that is very broad, almost in an unprecedented way. And I think the Justice Department is going to be asked, and should be asked, to explain why exactly they had to take those rather dramatic measures. And also will have to explain why they have gone, I think, so aggressively in search of these leakers, but haven't gone as aggressively, or at least not as aggressively in public, on other leaks that may have benefited the administration. I mean, you've had top administration officials talking about the presidential daily brief of President Obama, spinning it in a way that benefits the president. Where is the Justice Department investigation of those leaks?
Yeah, this larger issue, Steve, of we didn't know. We didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Does become a narrative that I think deserves to be addressed and responded to by the White House. You look at Benghazi, the president said, look, we were just telling what we knew. When we went over those talking points, we wanted to limit them, he's suggesting, because we wanted to stick to what we knew, and it was an ongoing investigation. And yet, they were so very specific about pinning it on the video. So that raises a lot of questions. Then you've got this IRS issue and this AP issue. Again, part of the explanation is we didn't know. And it raises, is that okay? Not to know.
No, this is the one thing that these three different events and scandals or potential scandals have in common, is that the White House is disclaiming any knowledge or any real serious involvement. In the case of Benghazi, as you point out, they're now saying, look, this was not done at the White House. This was the CIA. We just worked from the CIA's talking points. That's not true. The CIA officials who are involved in this process understand that that's not true, and I suspect we'll be hearing a lot more from them in the coming days. It's also the White House's claim that they didn't know anything about these IRS investigations, and also that they didn't know anything about what the Justice Department was doing. Maybe they're right about the latter two, but we certainly need to explore this more, and I think there are real questions about how much the White House knew.
Indeed. Steve, thank you, as always. We'll
Thanks,
see you later.
Martha.
Okay.